Well, welcome y'all. I'm calling this new get-together PTW Network, and what that is Prepare the Way Network. I had a business called Prepare the Way, and since we've taken the store off the website and we've left, I don't know if y'all have seen it or not, but we left, there's like 65 videos that are very informative on a broad, wide variety of subjects having to do with preparation. I mean, from security to home food storage to planning having to do with water and everything. So anyway, that's what PTW Network stands for. We're going to video these sessions. Today I'm primarily going to be kind of laying down foundation of what I hope that the PTW Network becomes, and then just kind of talk about in general what I think I'm going to be going into with y'all and what we're going to be interacting about having to do with preparation. So it'll be a little while, probably 45 minutes to an hour before we actually get into any nuts and bolts of any particulars on preparation today. So with that said, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Terry Leverett. I grew up in Dallas, born and raised there. I'm 56 now. I was shot in 1979. Guy shot me, pulled a gun to the back of my neck, point blank range. As a young man, and up to now, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business at 18, and I've had many, but I've never had a job since then. I left home at 15 and worked, had jobs until I was 18, but actually got married early too, right before I turned 18. I was 17 when I got married, and that marriage lasted until I got shot. My previous wife left about halfway into 6 months into rehab. I've had several businesses in Dallas. I had an appliance business and service. That's what I did until I got shot. Then I had a concrete fencing business. At the same time I did the service. I just had a lot of employees that did it. I had a business where I financed contractors, construction people, and financed their individual jobs. And a lot of them would get to work, but they wouldn't have the money to front the materials or whatever, and so I'd finance that for a percentage of the job. And then I finally started a used appliance company. That's a business that I had in Dallas for 25 years. Had up to 30 employees. Actually, we had that business whenever we left Dallas and moved to Arkansas. But in November of 1992, I read a book called Bankruptcy 1995. It laid down a premise that the economy of the United States was going to go belly up, go bankrupt. By 1995, probably, but absolutely by 1997. And this book was written by Harold Figge, who was commissioned by Congress to do a study on this. I mean, it was not just a fly-by-night, somebody just had a few weird ideas and he wrote a book. I mean, it was really credible. It had a lot of well-educated, well-thought-of people writing the book. But when I read the book, I wasn't even a believer then. And it just touched something deep in my belly. I know it's my Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And I just knew that I had to study and learn how to not feel stupid. I felt like a sitting duck in Dallas in the middle of 5 million people, and I could just picture them going nuts. I mean, I knew nothing about how to get water, store water. I knew nothing. I just knew water came out of a tap and food from a grocery store, just like most people. But I set out on a quest to reverse that, and I mean, went on in fast motion. I mean, by March of Then the following year, about 4 months later, I'd actually bought a house in 23 acres in Arkansas. And for many years, I mean, it was like 8 years, 7 or 8 years, we drove, and Grace and I, we drove to Arkansas every weekend. No, actually it wasn't 7 years, it was about 3.5 years. We drove every weekend and worked with the people and actually developed a place that was totally self-sufficient. I had a guy that worked for me during the week, and then I'd go work with him on the weekends while we were there. But we would drive up on Friday night. It's about a 4.5 hour drive, and we'd drive back to Dallas Sunday night and go back to work, make money to pay for the rehab in the place. But through the 90s, though, we really learned a lot through practical application. We did like alternative energies. We had to put generators and fuel storage in place. We had animals. We tried raising rabbits. I learned I didn't want to. But I had my window that I farmed, the credo was that I wanted to be able to take care of and sustain 20 people for 2 years. And raising rabbits, the feed that I was feeding them was about 55% alfalfa. And with an alfalfa product like that, it only stays good for about 6 months. The nutrient value declines rapidly after that, and it just wouldn't fit into my 2-year window. So we built a whole building about the size of this room where we had suspended cages and low pressure water and everything. I only ate rabbit once though, and whoever fixed it didn't know what they were doing. It was real chewy. People say it tastes like chicken. Have any of y'all ever had rabbit? You like it?
No.
Well, it tastes real chewy. And anyway, I'm a texture eater, so I didn't like it. It didn't hurt me too much to have to tear down the shed and all that kind of stuff. But in the fall of '96, I moved to Arkansas and left the business in Dallas. And we ended up on 300 acres. At the end of let's see, when was it? In '97, after working on that 23 acres for about 3.5 years, getting it about where we wanted it, self-sufficient, well, we found out that a new highway, the new Highway 71, was going to go right through our property, and that we'd have to get to the other side of our property, we'd have to drive down the highway 3 miles, take the exit, and come back up the service road. I mean, it was like going to go right through our house. So it might have been 20 or 30 years before they actually built the new highway, but I wasn't going to be a sitting duck where the government was the only people I had as for a customer. So we started looking for some other land and ended up with 300 acres. Hit slide 2. And now on this property, we utilized for ourselves about 8.5 acres. And on that property is where we really learned and honed what we were doing. I mean, we had, the river was all the way around us. You can see there's a river around the borders. We had like 2.5 miles of river frontage. And I was excited when I bought the place. I thought we'd be able to have hydropower. But after being there, I learned that with 2.5 miles of river frontage, we only had a 1.5 foot drop in the whole 2.5 miles, and there would be more friction from in the pipe than the drop would give. Anyway, bottom line is we couldn't do anything. We couldn't dam it up because it was a public use river. They used it for canoeing and a lot of different things, but so didn't have that. The only alternative power that I could do was generators and solar. So we ended up being able to store We had like 10,000 gallons of fuel storage. We had 2 generators, battery banks, and we had it to where we could do 2 years with the grid off. We could do 2 years on our. We never had to do 2 years, but there was a bad ice storm that happened in 2000, going into 2001. It was like the day after Christmas, or the day before Christmas, I forget. But we had the only lights within miles. I mean, there was an ice storm. It was so bad that between us and a town that was 6 miles away, there was only 3 or 4 telephone poles left standing. I mean, we were without power for 11 days. And we kept one of our neighbors. We had some new age neighbors, and we were able to witness to them and all, but we pretty much kept them alive because, I mean, they were so naive moving out in the country and just had no knowledge. And they were vegan, and they came off of that strict diet a little bit. But anyway, it was interesting times. We learned so much though. But then in May of '04, we came to Kansas City. We came to a Joseph County conference, and shortly after that, the Lord told us to move to Kansas City. We Grace pretty much accepted it right away. The Lord disconnected her from the land right away, but I mean, that piece of property, I thought I was going to die on that piece of property. It was utopia for me, and the Lord had to tell me about 3 times, but we finally moved to Kansas City in October of '04. Once we were here, when we moved, we were in the middle of feeding. We had a food ministry, and we were supplying 300 ministries with free food, donated food, feeding about 30,000 people. And we stopped that in March of '06 and started an overstock salvage business called One Tree Investments, which I sold in August of 2010. And after that, you can go ahead and turn. After that, we started the companies that we have now, which is Prepare the Way. We started that in towards the end of 2010. We started teaching preparation. It's and the conferences are where a lot of the videos that we have on our website. That's a lot of the conferences is where that teaching came from. We ran a store. We had like 2,000 products that we can still get wholesale, but it just didn't work as a viable business. And so towards in August of 2011, we started Bulk Food International. Anyway, Bulk Food International, I think most of y'all are familiar with it. But for the sake of the tape, it's where we sell bulk food in large containers. Go to the next tape. We sell bulk food in large 2,000-pound containers, primarily for investments. It's a tangible asset investment where no matter what happens in the economy or with the dollar or electronic markets, whoever invests in that, their name goes on it, and it stays there just like silver or gold or whatever. But I think if and when bad things happen, I believe that people will be spending their gold to buy food. So go to the next one. Now these are just different views of our. That picture is of our new warehouse. But go ahead and go to the next one. Okay. Now the same warehouse, we also sell food in buckets. Everything that we have in our IBCs, we sell in buckets. And in general, we just say that we're selling the big containers for investments and the buckets for people with preparation in mind. We try to kind of have cross purpose. I want to share with y'all why I think at a core I am doing this, why I felt like I needed to prepare to begin with, and why I need to teach people. And it's really, at a heart level, why I go to this trouble. I really didn't understand this until about 4 years ago. I was at a conference, and it was a conference on rest that Jen Townsley put on, and there was a speaker named Ramon that was talking, and he's a life coach, and he as he was talking, he engaged with the lady in the front of the room, and the lady had said that she liked working with people in the inner city, and he said, why? And she said, it just because it makes my heart come alive. And why? And he just kept digging in and going deeper and deeper and deeper with her. And finally, at 6 layers deep, at her core, it was because there was a member of her family that had got on drugs and had ended up in the inner city, and that she just felt like by helping others, she was indirectly helping her sister. And through watching that process of going deeper and deeper, it helped me in my process, and I realized that the reason I'm doing with paper route money as an 11-year-old kid, I paid house payments. It was brutal, and as a young boy like that, I just made vows that I didn't care if I had to kill, steal, or destroy. I wasn't gonna live like that ever again in my life. And of course, since then, I've had to denounce that vow and stuff, but it's still this stuff in my heart that I don't want to have to see anybody else go through. And I believe especially in this area with eschatology and such, I mean, everybody knows that some trouble's going to come. It's just a matter of when. So, with that said, just want to ask the question: how many of y'all have done any preparation at all? Are all y'all kind of new, just coming into it? Have any of y'all studied any at all, or
read a little?
To what level? I mean, read a couple books, or
yeah, watched some of your videos.
Yeah.
I've done research, not particularly in this area, but I know quite a bit about it.
Tell me what. I'd like to know who I'm speaking to.
Well, I know that the end times are coming. There's troubles. Wars, rumor of wars. Also, I know about the FEMA camps. I know that kind of thing is going to happen. Also, I had dreams, prophetic dreams about it, and so I definitely know it's going to happen. And then people in the community that I've talked to, a lot of them are preparing to certain degrees, to certain levels. There's not a lot of organization, and so I think it's really good that it's organized, definitely organized. But people are storing food in their basements, water, and my roommate has jugs of water, tons of food. I mean, people know it's coming, and for me, my particular interest in it is kind of watching the news, and as a big man, I think I'm going to be able to get through it somehow, just on moxie alone, not just on preparation. Probably
Really?
Foolish.
I say, really? Okay. Well, I hope you learn enough, and network enough, and I hope we can put you in a place to not just help yourself, but many others. So, go to the next. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of going into what I hope that tonight is the beginning of. I want to call it something other than just a home group and a get together, you know, because I do want it to be something organized. I do want it to have structure. I do want it to have purpose, but I really insist on it not being some kick the tire kind of thing taken casually. I want it to be people that are at least serious enough and committed that I feel like we're building something, that I'm not going to just waste my breath for 2 sessions and then you're going to be down the road and you're going to, oh yeah, I heard a little bit about that a couple weeks ago. I mean, this is not that for me. I want committed people. And so that's what I hope you are, and who I'm going to link arms with as this thing goes forward. But I just see this as, I wrote in the written version that teaching leaders to lead their sphere of influence. I want to back off of that and expand that a little bit. I don't believe to be pre-qualified for that you have to be a leader. I believe anybody that has answers and has positioned themselves to either help others or help others with knowledge and know-how, but has answers when trouble comes, and it has a little passion about it, will by default automatically be a leader. I mean, in any troubled time, the guy with a plan is the leader. And you get a little passion behind it, and then, oh my gosh, I mean, they're leading well and a bunch. And people will follow people with answers and passion, even if they know they're wrong. That's what made Hitler happen. He popped up and took his place in troubled times. I mean, the troubled times were already there. People knew he was wrong, and they still followed him because of his passion and because he had answers for the day. So anyway, I want to be able to bring answers and direction when darkness comes, and I believe that we can be the brightest shining lights in the darkest days. I believe that God's a big God, and that He does most of what He does through His people. And I am just determined to, call me crazy faith or whatever, but I just think that I'm one of those people that's going to be a bright shining light, and that through stepping out in faith, that God will honor it, and that protection will come, that purpose will come, that provision will come, and that will happen. I mean, if I get martyred, okay, but the Lord's told me that I'm going to be alive when He returns. And so I am planning and moving forward as if that was a reality. It's just like if I was on an operating table, I would tell the doctor, operate. Even if I had cancer and it looked like I was going to die, I'd look him in the eye and tell him, doctor, before I went under, I'd tell him, you operate on me as if I'm going to live. Well, I come to this subject in that same method. And so I'm serious about it, and I think that'll come across if it hasn't already. I think by bringing people together that we can, secondary benefit of forming a network would be, I had a business with 2,000 products and such. I have all these wholesale accounts with suppliers like water filters and alternative energy, food, I mean, you name it. And so I want to it's kind of co-op style, but not really co-op style. I mean, I want to make these products available at wholesale levels to those of you that we're working with and that join us. And that could do several things. It could take advantage of bulk purchasing power, but it would also make sure you'll buy the right stuff that'll last. and that you don't have to keep buying, or that you don't go to use something, 5 years from now and it's gone bad on you. But I think we can do volume pricing by the notes and the written notes say by focusing on 4 or 5 products at a time instead of 2,000. It doesn't take a whole lot of my time or whoever is working with me, but it can get supplies in your hands at a low cost. As early as next week, I hope to have like a 6-month plan, what products that I'm going to try to make available each month for the next 6 months, so you can plan. I'll get some of y'all's feedback towards the end once I'm finished on what's your highest priority. And I'll put eventually, maybe it'll be a co-op style. I don't know what comes of it. I'm not trying to pigeonhole everything and write the whole program now. We'll just see how many people get involved. Now I'm hoping that we're going to eventually have several people very knowledgeable in preparation. I believe I know 3 or 4 different ones, couples that are going to be part of this. I just hit them on too short notice for this. I think I sent out the email on Tuesday. Hey, show up Saturday. Anyway, as far as network, I wrote in there that many people, there's been a couple of groups around IHOP that have tried to promote the fact of everyone going to all their neighbors and getting their block or their 2 blocks or whatever, getting all people on the same page as far as preparedness, and even forming plans to be able to block off their streets if need be, and be able to work as a community. And you see different efforts like that on the internet, on YouTube and such as well, but I haven't seen any of those work yet. I've not seen any of them that work. I mean, because in any block in our country, there's just too many people. There's a high percentage of people that just will not acknowledge it. I think, for me, I think that being able to communicate, whether you're a block or a mile or 10 miles, being able to communicate and get answers and get, whether it's knowledge, whether it's help, whether it's supply or whatever, is much more realistic and I guess plausible, and is the approach that I'd like to try to take. So with this network, I listed 4 goals, but I want to form close relationships with a nucleus of serious people that are believing they're destined with God and what He can do through them, and are willing to put that on the line, and that they want to get people that want to get close, that want to prepare together, and that want to prepare with like-minded and network with like-minded people. Out of this, I hope that some unity comes. Being like-minded and come together, I hope some both closeness and unity are byproducts. And out of that, you can only be held accountable by people closest to you. They're the only ones that know you well enough to hold you accountable. I mean, and when I say accountable, I just I want to help each of you, hopefully first with information and then one-on-one if I need to have some goals that you're shooting towards as far as preparation goes. I listed some other things having to do with but y'all can having to do with the vision. Y'all can read that stuff. That was the stuff that was most important to me. But anyway, I want to read y'all these statements and see like comments if you have any comments on them, and then I'll start into talk about actual preparation here in a minute. A mentor of mine collects like one-liners, and he's got just a bunch of them. But these are some that I've found going through my notes today. One of it says, the only thing worse than preparing for a disaster that doesn't happen is not preparing for the one that does. And there's a lot of people, myself included, that prepared for Y2K, thought it was the real deal. I thought that's why that when I read that book, it hit me so hard in my gut. That I just felt driven to study preparation like nothing ever in my life before. But many people got disillusioned with nothing happening with Y2K. I mean, they just gave up on it and gave it away. I mean, a lot of people took all their long-term storage food and gave it to charities. I mean, that happened with us in our food charity, Food Mission USA. We got a lot of that kind of stuff. But here's one that the Lord gave me. It said, projected strength brings order, perceived weakness brings chaos. That is a good thing to remember. I mean, that's true in management. That is true in defense, of course. But I mean, it's true in all aspects of life. It's true in a home. When you have a weak mom or a weak dad, kids are chaotic. When you have a dad in place for discipline, one that lays down rules and expects his kid to have first time obedience instead of forced scream obedience. I mean, it's there's order. Okay, here's another one. Preparation is about giving yourself the most choices, the most choices possible to be able to live a life of dignity in adverse situations. And here's the one I like. It says, nothing happens until something happens. I think you're going to hear me always, every time you show up, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done? Because, I mean, even Paul said, I'll show you my faith by my works. Well, I came up in a family of people with good ideas, and they would always pat themselves on the back for all their brilliant ideas, and they'd bask in their brilliance, but they never did anything. When I was 18, the first business I tried to start, I went to a member of my family and said, I don't want to work a job anymore. I want to start a business. And they had like 25 years in the freight business, working at freight companies with semi trucks and all that. They'd been in dock management and upper office management, and they told me that they could get all the truck radiators. We ought to build a radiator shop. They could get all their truck radiators we could do. So at 18, I took 2 weeks vacation that I had from a job and savings, and in 2 weeks I built a radiator shop. I leased out a spot. It wasn't pretty, but it was practical, and got bats for hydraulic lifts, torches. I got everything needed to do a radiator shop. Set up a radiator shop. We never did one radiator. Never did one. And so I just learned at an early age, I'm not going to wait on anybody with any ideas. I'm going to get my ideas, and I'm going to kick it in gear, and I'm going to get it done. And even when I gave my life to the Lord, I got to a place where, I'm just the get it done guy. I'm all about action. I know in this area we're part of the prayer movement, and people are called to be Annas and sit before the Lord, but that's not me. I'm a type A. I'm unapologetic. Type A, and I just tell people, don't call me in another prayer room. I'm the get it done guy. If you need something done, holler at me. I'm your guy. So I mean, I do my own personal prayer, but I mean, anyway, if you read Revelations, bad times have to start sometime, ultimately leading to Jesus' return. So at the end of the day, I don't understand, I really don't understand people that are praying for our nation to be, or the earth to be revival. I know we want to see souls saved, and we know that's going to happen. But why save our nation? Why take us back 4 years in our nation? Because at the end of the day, I mean, when everything falls apart, Jews are going to say, "Come, Lord Jesus, come," and Jesus comes back. I mean, for me and my world, I'd say, let's get it on. Let's get this thing moving. I mean, let's just do what we can to lead as many people as we can through the troubled times, but just embrace it, because it's going to happen whether we like it or not. I mean, okay. All right, so any comments on any of those one-liners I gave you?
What's the one you said, nothing happens until something happens?
Nothing happens until something happens. Yeah, that's the
I like
best.
that one.
That's the best description of.
What was the first one? Projected strength and order.
Projected weakness brings chaos.
Projected strength brings order. Perceived weakness brings chaos. The rest of these came from other people, but I got that one straight from the Lord.
Yeah, that's
And he was talking to me about weapons at the time.
good.
Yeah, I mean, back in '03, we were having a little financial difficulty, and I had, mid-'90s, I'd been a gun dealer. And when Brady got shot, and Reagan, and all that happened, and the Brady bill was this big thing, and it looked like it was just going to be too cumbersome to be a gun dealer, and that you'd end up with a ATF file. And it's, once you get an ATF file, you're just always a target. You're always, if something happens in your area, the first one looked at. I mean, I didn't want that. So, but I ended up with quite a few guns that I had, guns and ammo. And so, in '03, I was thinking about selling some of the guns to take some of the pressure off that we were having, and the Lord wouldn't let me. I just knew I couldn't. And I'm in the middle of feeding a bunch of people. I mean, we're feeding many thousands of people at the time, and so my question before the Lord was, I'm just wanting help. And so it was, what, you going to have me save them on one hand and shoot them on the other? I mean, what's this about? And he didn't answer that, but it was during Katrina. Every time you'd see on the news, if you saw soldiers and weaponry, you saw order. And if they were absent, you'd see chaos. And you'd read about what happened in the stadium. Did y'all read about what happened in the New Orleans stadium? It was awful. Awful. Just, I can't even, anyway. But there was no weapons, it wasn't there. So, anyway. So getting down to starting to talk about preparation. If you haven't answered the question, however you do it, whether you're a praying person, if you're a non-believer, then you just have to decide one way or another. But you have to get the question answered: how many people for how long? Before you really can do any meaningful preparation, you have to get that answered, because if not, there's many dangers. Number one, there's no way to quantify what you're going to do. I mean, you can whimsically go from thinking you have enough for one day, one day and then get up thinking you need enough for 5 years the next. You just have to answer that question, and it just makes it simple. But it also, from somebody like me, who in business and every aspect of life, I have the attitude that if a little good is good, more is better. I just became this hoarding mess until I figured this out. I mean, back when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was in business, so I had a little money, and I found 6,000 pounds of white flour on sale, and I had a truck to haul it, so I bought it. I mean, of course, I didn't know how to put it up. I put it on a pallet, covered it with a tarp under a carport. And as you can guess, I mean, less than 6 months, I mean, it was a brick. And then a few months after that, I was having to trap all the rodents that were underneath the pallet, eating it from the bottom. Hey, it was ugly. But I say, number one, don't buy white flour, buy the grains. But number two is, if I probably would have only needed 600 pounds if I had done the math, if I had got that question answered. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go to slide 8. Next one. Yeah. So anyway, how many people for how long? Most people, especially novices that haven't been around this long, you don't even know what you don't know. I mean, you need to do a little bit of reading. Sessions like this will pique your interest, pique your thoughts, and you need to learn the right questions to ask. The right questions to ask is the key to unlocking what you need for your situation. Go to next slide. So, okay, on the screen are a few questions that you can start asking yourself just to evaluate where you are right now. I'll show you that there's, as we go a little later, we'll get into some slides and stuff. I'll show you that you can make a small apartment prepared, and there's something. I don't care where you are or what walk of life you're in. There's something that you can do. There's always, even if you have less than 100 square feet. You can stack it floor to ceiling. There's something you can do. But the next question, how much space will I need? Well, if you hadn't answered the question of how many for how long, you can't answer that question. You can always, if you have own your property, own a house or whatever, you can always either add on some space, dig, rent, or bottom line is, the reason you want to ask these things, because once you evaluate your system, are you going to have to move in order to accommodate it? Of course, what can I afford? In some of my conferences, there's people that say, I don't have any money, I can't. But I can show people that if you can take $25 to $30 a month, if that's all you can afford, you can still buy like a 5-gallon bucket a month. I can still put people on a plan of that they don't have to feel helpless. They can actually take charge of their situation and make some advances. And you need to say, what kind of food do I eat? Because you need to eat what you store and store what you eat. That way you rotate it, and it doesn't. It's one thing. If you can have and a lot of people have the idea that, okay, when trouble comes, I'll just eat beans and rice, and I'll just get by that way. You can do that. You better start eating a good bit of it to get your body acclimated to it, though, because your body, if that's all you're eating, it'll go into shock. What would be my alternative water source? Even in an apartment, you can deal with that. You can There's ways of storing it. I mean, Grace and I had a small space at one of our houses, but the house we lived in before here, it wasn't anything like this. It was small. But we had in our garage, it had an 8-foot ceiling, and we took 2 of those large IBC containers. They hold 275 gallons each, and we stacked them on top of each other when they were empty, of course. They weigh about 90 pounds empty, and then we filled them up. And so in 12, 13 square feet, we had 550 gallons. Of course, I mean, so it doesn't take a lot of space. You just have a willing mind, heart, and drive to do it. You can do it. A lot of people want to store things in the basement. Well, I found that a lot of basement doors are small. They have like 28-inch doors to get into them. I found there's a tank you can get online. It's $300. It's a 300-gallon tank. It's 27 inches wide, and it folds up, and you can actually get it in a basement. And it's tall, and it has a little spigot on the bottom of it, so it's really credible, and it's made for storing water. So there's always, where there's a will, there's a way. And of course, the last question, can I do what I need from here, from where I am? That's, you probably don't have to answer that question right now, but ultimately that's a question you're gonna have to evaluate. These are most of the topics that we're gonna go through in depth. I mean, everything starts with a plan, though. As I said early on, he who has a plan is going to be the leader by default, because most people don't. Just little things to pique your thoughts. I mean, you should even have a plan with everybody in your house or your loved ones. Think ahead of time and get everybody on the same page with, if communication went down, your phone, your cell phone, or there wasn't any electricity, that you have your first, second, and third choices of places to meet by automatic default. I mean, that's just one simple step that should be covered by a plan. If you got kids, but if it's not kids, if it's brothers and sisters, if it's us, and we're going to help each other through some stuff. I mean, hopefully, we're going to get some alternate communication in place, because that's key. Communication is key to anything. That's why in adverse situations, like when that Muslim Brotherhood thing went down, what do? They stopped the internet. They didn't want people communicating, because that brings unity and multiplication. But anyway, a good plan will a strategy on having the first, second, and third levels of places. I mean, because you may have to walk. I mean, what? This is far-fetched, but what happens if the EMT bomb goes off? I don't know if y'all have read the book 1 Second After. You ought to read that. I mean, that is an actual plausible possibility. Every country in the world knows that the U.S., more than any other country, is susceptible to one of those bombs going off, and that would destroy the electric grid. We wouldn't have any electricity, and it would take years to get it back up. It wouldn't be something that's fixed in a week, because the transformers that would be destroyed, the main transfer transformers that would be destroyed, they're not even manufactured here in our country. I don't know what y'all know about it, but anyway. The leading expert in the country on EMT possibilities is the guy that wrote the book, so it's a credible book. Santi read it; he could tell you quite a bit about it after the fact. After we get done here. And with that, I'm gonna take a break.